We are more interested in what kind of data is in the model and how can we use the data in the operation of the buildings. But this is where we need to improve, both Statsbygg and the construction industry and the building industry.
Welcome to The Great Switch, a podcast series by Schneider Electric, sharing the experiences of visionaries and innovators making an impact towards a sustainable and efficient world. With digitalization of society and the transition away from carbon-based energy, life is becoming increasingly electrified. This shift has a profound impact on corporations worldwide. In The Great Switch, we share insights from pioneers who are bringing clean, reliable energy solutions to life. Together, we explore how these frontrunners utilize cutting-edge technologies in energy management and how automation is reshaping industries and improving lives. I'm your host, Oliver Oberg, and in this first episode, we are joined by Harald Nikolaisen, CEO of Statsbygg, Norway's largest public property developer and a key player in the country's green transition. Today, we'll explore how public sector leadership can accelerate sustainability, how digitalization are changing the way we design and operate buildings, the need for right competence, and what it actually takes to reach net zero by 2030. Let's dive into it. So today we are joined by Harald Nikolaisen, CEO of Statsbygg, right?
Yeah.
Statsbygg is the Norwegian government's building commissioner, property manager, and developer. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Perfect. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here.
Very nice to have you, Harald. So, as pioneers of the Great Switch, I'd love to hear, how are you a part of the Great Switch of the energy landscape?
As in the position of a role like a government-owned property manager and construction commissioner, we have a very big footprint, sustainability in both energy usage and carbon footprint. And being a state-owned agency, it's important for us to adhere to the political goals on this case. But we also started some time ago on our own initiative, actually, because back in 2016, Statsbygg celebrated our 200th anniversary. I mean, yeah.
We were 200 years.
200 years. And of course, it's a bit sneaky one because, of course, Statsbygg as organization hadn't existed in 200 years. But the state agency for having state buildings dates back to 1814 or 1816 when Norway was separated from Denmark and started to build their own nation. Then the need for buildings came. So we celebrated our 200th anniversary in 2016, and then we said, well, what does Statsbygg need to do to be relevant for the next 200 years? We did not want to look back and celebrate history, but we wanted to look forward. And then we pointed out actually 4 areas which we thought would be the dominating areas for the next 200 years. And one of them was sustainability. The second one was new technology, especially digitalization, and of course then the combination of those, and it was more for less. We need to get more out of the money, and the third was competence and the fight for the skilled workers. So those 4 issues with them mainly focus on the twin transition between sustainability and digitalization. That started already back in 2016. So we have been working very consistently on those issues. For almost 10 years. And that is why we're at this place where we are now. I think we have been also done a lot of the boring work related to how to calculate, what kind of tools to use, how to get control of the data, how to know what the state of our business are. So it has been a very interesting journey. And now that the EU Green Act and the Norwegian government has set ambitious targets for many of these things, I think we're ready to rock because we've been working with this for many years.
Yeah.
So that's important.
But would you say that those, like now I mean, 2016. It hurts to say, but it's almost 10 years ago.
Yes.
Right. So would you say that those were right priorities that you made back then?
Yes, definitely. And I think that the history shows that, and I think also we have. As you know, the building and the construction sector has a very large impact on the use of resources, the use of energy worldwide, and that is also the case in Norway. So you cannot actually make the great switch neither on energy or sustainability if you don't do something about the way we use our buildings, the way we build our buildings, and the way we operate and renovate the buildings, because they have such a lot of the total CO2 or the footprint at all, and also the energy usage. You know, in Norway there's a lot of, and in many countries I think there's a lot of debate on how to get more energy and how to get fossil-free energy production. And there's a lot of conflicts also in Norway with the windmills and solar panels and the energy, and we have in Norwegian we call it konfliktfri energi, also the energy without any conflicts, and that is of course the way we can use our buildings smarter to be more efficient in the energy usage, and that is, we have been working hard to get focus on energy efficiency in existing buildings, because if you really you can reduce energy usage by, I would say 25% in the total built environment, and that would end up to a lot of.
That's huge.
Yeah, and it would.
But would you say that you, as a government-owned property manager and facility owner, that you are like front runners when it comes to this?
Yes, I think we are, and I think that is due to several things. One is that we are state-owned, and that we have a volume, a size in the construction sector or the building sector in Norway. We are although we do not amount to very much in percentage of the total sector, we are one of the dominant players anyway. And that is because the sector is quite fragmented. So it's difficult to find big players to do the technology shifts and to do the groundwork and the preparation, I think. So that puts us in a separate role, because we have in many ways the muscles to be a front runner and to do the long dirty work in preparing and working tirelessly on this over many years. And of course, as being a state-owned, when the government launched their goals for sustainability, we are an important tool also for them to. One thing is our own business, but also to influence the rest of the sector and to get the totality moving in the right direction. So obviously, yes. And we also started this, as I said, in 2016 on our own. Before there was very much political push actually in Norway on this. So we were early in many ways, yeah.
But how have that changed, or have it changed anything? Like how does your role at Statsbygg connect to Norway's sustainability and digitization goals?
Yes, we have been working in two phases. I think we have been working on talking to our owners and explaining to them and giving them data for making good decisions on which kind of ambitions one could have.
What was that? Because you were like, you have already done the journey before they jumped on the train.
And also because for politicians and bureaucrats, which are not skilled technicians, it's they do not have the insights.
Yeah. To actually data.
Yeah, we provide data and insights, and especially making them securing them that this is not dangerous, it's not very expensive, it will not have a lot of disadvantages, of course. And that's a good question for a politicals who say, well, what will it mean? Will things be very complicated? Will only the big companies do this? Will it only be valid in the big cities? What about the smaller municipalities? What about the small enterprises? and we can then provide data for decisions and try to influence them and push them in the right direction. That is one part which we have been working on, not as a commercial influencer, but just talking to our owners, answering questions, giving them insights in what we've found so that they can make good decisions. And also, of course, working tirelessly on our own buildings to make them more energy efficient. We had a big help from some years ago when the energy prices really boomed in Norway. Then we had all our clients wanting to be more energy efficient because the energy was so very expensive. That was a wake-up call, because in Norway, due to our water energy production, we have had stable and very cheap energy over time. I think every Norwegian knows the story about when Norwegians go to holidays in Spain or England and leave the lights on because we are not used to having to save energy, because the energy is clean and it's from the waterfalls and it's cheap. So we had a history of not being very aware of energy efficiency and energy consumption. And then
would you say that was a big transition?
Yes, it was a big transition in the minds, because then all of a sudden it became very expensive. And then we got the push we needed also from the users of our buildings paying the bills, and we were able to cooperate in energy efficiency in a much more targeted way than we could before, because then it's more like an idealistic approach. We should use it for the better good, and that works. That walks slower than when it's your own money you need to save. Then you get more on the alert. So that was one big change. Now the energy prices has gone down a little bit, and we can also feel that that makes it a little bit slower on the progress on energy efficiency. So there has been some kind of a shift. First, it was not on the attention to everybody. People wasn't aware of it. We had enough energy. Now everybody knows that there's a fight on new clean energy between TikTok and data centers and greening the industry, or building new green industry in Norway. So now everybody know that we have an energy shortage coming up and have to prioritize. And then, of course, the energy without any conflicts, which is just saving energy in running the buildings, is becoming more and more important.
And we have a few topics on that I would like to deep dive with you on throughout this podcast. But before going there, or maybe this is like a nice segue into that. So Statsbygg is behind one of Norway's most ambitious construction projects, right? The life science building.
Yeah.
This facility will not only be Norway's largest academic building, but also one of the largest projects of Statsbygg so far, right? So, and of course, leading example of sustainability and energy efficient construction. So, can you give us an overview of the construction of the life science building?
As you said, it's a very ambitious and also very large building, and it's about 100,000 square meters, way below 10 billion euros, I'd say. No, sorry, 1 billion euros. Yeah. 1 billion euros, above 1 billion euros, depending on the currency, of course. So it's a big endeavor, both in size and in cost. But it's also a very important building, because it's like the building where we are doing the world-leading research about the future, and what we need to cure diseases and to make a prosperity life for our children and grandchildren. So it's like a very it's a very interesting building in so many ways, but also a very complex building because it's a very large building, and it's situated between the research part of the University of Oslo and the University Hospital. But the ground conditions are very poor. It's like clay, which is difficult to construct in, and it's also in an area where we are not allowed to build very high by the municipality due to regulation requirements. So we have to have a very big footprint, and as the soil being very challenging, it is a very difficult or the first phase. The excavation phase was very challenging, and also one of the things that have been but now we are above ground. We are moving into the mechanical completion on part of the building, so we are way beyond that now. Now we're looking forward to actually getting it done and getting the researchers moved in. And it's a cooperation also between the university researchers and the hospital, which of course is I think very good. Gives a lot of possibility, but of course also challenges two kind of different users with their requirements, their equipment. And one of the characteristics with the life science building is that it is built for flexibility.
Flexibility in what way?
In a technical way, and in the usage of the building, because it's difficult. It's difficult now to say, well, what kind of technology will we need in 20 years to research on the future life science of the world, right? And even so, when the planning started 10, 15 years ago, it was even more difficult. So the time span is so long, and this is a building that is constructed to be operating in 100 years framework. So nobody knows how this research will look like in 20, 30 years from now. So it's built in a lot of flexibility in usage, laboratories, technology, and that is, of course, very good, but also very expensive. Flexibility costs. So that is some of the highlights of the building, and of course it's also since it's a life science project. Of course, it's important that it has a good CO2 footprint and has a sustainable way of working and construction, and it's to be BREEAM-NOR excellent, as you know, certified as excellent, and I think that is that's quite ambitious. There are some buildings which are certified as excellent in the BREEAM standard, but not of this. If you look into the size of it and also all the construction work and the ground preparation and so on, so it's actually a very ambitious goal for us.
Oh yeah, it definitely feels like it. But like, what does that certification mean in practice?
Well, it's. I would say it's through two things. Of course, it's a certificate and a proof of that we have achieved a building that has a sustainable footprint and low CO2 emissions. But it's also a process. When you start this BREEAM certification early in the planning phase, you commit to a standard where you all the time optimize and try to make the building better and better on a sustainable charter. So it's both it's a certificate for the end status of the building, but it's even more an ambition to work through the project in a sustainable way and always make the choices taking sustainability and CO2 footprint into considerations. So it's I think the most important part of it actually is the process, and that results in a high standard. But it's the way you actually work through the project with the optimization all the time, which is the most important.
Statsbygg has been at the forefront of digitization and innovation within the Norwegian construction sector, setting ambitious goals to modernize and streamline public building projects. You've already achieved many of your digitization targets, but what have been the biggest enablers of reaching these digitalization goals?
I think I think I would like to maybe state two things, which actually isn't related to technology, and I think that is also a separate point. The important enablers for us hasn't been actually technology rated. It has been more concerning collaborations with the vendors and the other companies in the sector, exchanging ideas, looking out for what is happening also outside the construction sector actually. So that is one thing. Cooperation with all the vendors, like Schneider, for instance, seeing what are their recommendation, what are they working on, what is working in other sector than the building construction sector, which is quite a conservative sector. It might not be there. You would find the quickest innovations. So that is one thing, and the other thing is, I think, consistently leadership support, curiosity, and also the ability in the leader of leadership, for example, of Statsbygg, to be able to imagine what the technology can be used for. That is also the ability actually to not maybe understand the details, but understand the implications and think what can we use it for? How can we use it in our cases is maybe two of the most important enablers. And then when we started cooperating and doing pilots and saying, well, what can we use drones for? What can we use AI for? How can we do energy efficiency on separate properties with smart sensors and with smart buildings? We very soon bumped into another question, that if we were going to scale this on a company level and actually make money of it in the way of large scale efficiency, we needed to take one step back actually and work much more on the IT infrastructure and the data governance of the business. So we had a lot of good pilots together with vendors where we learned, well, what is a smart building? What can sensors do? How can we use drones? What can we do with the data? But then trying to scale it up, well, is the data consistent? Can we trust them? Which systems do they come from? Who owns the data? How is the data interlocked in our IT structure at company level? How can we scale it, and how can we automate processes based on this? We had to take one step back actually and work more on the company infrastructure, the data policies, the data governance, the data stewardness, which is a new way of thinking, and you need that base. Otherwise, it's just fun, fun examples and fun innovation. And of course, if you have one building, then okay, you can have a smart house, and it's great. But we have 2,100 buildings spread all over Norway, built in different periods. One is from the 14th century, and wow. one is from this year. And how can you actually scale this and make it efficient on company level? That is challenging. So yeah, so we did a lot of very interesting things with drones. If you make the working process more efficient, and even for most safe.
Yeah. But in what way are you using drones? Like, this sounds super interesting.
Yeah, we use we started actually because we had some years ago we had some interesting some of our people out working in the buildings who were technology oriented and looked at the drone and thought, well, when we normally get up to this roof, we need to seal off the area. We need to hire a lift.
Yeah, and harnesses and everything.
We need to build scaffolding. We need to do safe work analysis, and then the users won't let us do it because they need the building to be open. So it was a lot of both hazards related to safety and a lot of costs. So they thought, well, why can't we use drones? And they we educated a couple of teams with drones pilot actually in Statsbygg some 5-10 years ago. And they started together with the vendors again then to experiment and see what can we use these drones for. And they found out, well, we can use them for window washing, we can use them for inspections, we can use them for filming. And then when we found out this, of course, we are not a production entity. So then we started to have competitions out in the market for getting the market to deliver this to us, not producing ourselves. So now we have a couple of drone firms working for us with inspections, washing of buildings from the outside, saving a lot of costs. What we would like to do, though, of course, is to inspect all of our buildings and use AI to identify damages and work with the maintenance in a foreseeing way. But then we need some standard and some what is a crack. I mean, you can film it and you can see there is a crack, but what is it? Is it a crack that needs to be fixed? Or is it a crack that can stay there for 10 years? How big is a crack? And how to automate? You need a lot of rules and a lot of standards to actually, it's very useful because now people don't have to go up there and we can look at it. But we would like to take the second step and automate the process and get the AI to look at it and actually see, no, we can, because then we could film all our buildings quite easily once a year and just have a process going through it, AI, and having prioritized the maintenance and having a much better control on how we maintain all the roof. And that's in buildings, that's often where the problem starts, isn't it? So, But then we also came into what I tried to explain earlier, that, well, then we need some standards, we need some governance, we need some systems on place. So it's useful to play with technology, but to actually scale it and get the big advantages, we need to work also on the tiresome parts of standards and rules and regulations and so.
But we are definitely touching on like innovation here, right? And it's quite amazing. So I would like to know a little bit more about like how you are working together with other vendors, as you see. Then I guess like technology providers and whomever. How are you? Because often what we see is that you see, for example, one facility and you think about one solution, and then you go in, you ask a company and you have some kind of light partnership. But how do you guys manage to? Because I believe that you also take them with you like throughout the journey. So it's not only, that one time, but to really be able to scale it, you need to build like lasting partnerships. Yeah. What's your take on that?
And I think so. And what we try to do is to have we work on separate ways, actually. Of course, when we have our construction projects, of course, we get a lot of opportunities to innovate together with all the vendors on board on the project. And what is important then is, of course, to learn from it and to make it a part of our best practice so that we implement the same experience in upcoming projects. And of course, that is the challenge with every project. It has a tendency to end up like every man's an island, and that's what happened in this project, and nobody else knows about it. So sharing experiences between the project and the portfolio is important. But what you also try to do, as you I think you mentioned, was when we work, because we have, of course, vendors making maintenance and operating our buildings in a very, that of course is in the eternal. We are going to have these buildings for 1,500 years. And when we have our frame agreements with the vendors on operation and maintenance, of course, we try to incentivize them to think about innovations and to share them and to cooperate with our operating staff out on the premises to learn from them. And we also have a separate initiative, which we call like a sandbox initiative, where we invite in vendors, startups, or whatever, who have an idea which they need to test, and that is something that is challenging for startups, where we can help them, because we have a lot of sandboxes around the country, and we have a lot of projects, and we if there are good ideas which they need let's say a proof of concept or a test in real life, we can provide that. through our property or through our project, and let them
And
test.
are you leading that like by yourselves? I understand you're providing the spaces and the knowledge sharing and so on. But are you also leading that, or are you doing that together with another, like the more academic part of or
No, normally we would be leading or being ahead of the cooperation, would be a better way of putting it. And I think one of the really fun example, I think, is now we have a large projects in Trondheim at the Norwegian Technology University. Where we are going to build a new campus. It's one of the major construction projects in the building sector in Norway. And of course, doing that on the University of Technology in Norway implies that we have a close cooperation with all the professors. They have a professor on every discipline that we actually work on in our project. So there's a lot of knowledge to tap into, and they have a lot of very motivated and very gifted students. So what we're trying to do is to engage the university in Trondheim in our project, and the latest thing we did was to have a student competition on 3D printing of a building. And that's where cooperation between us, where we launch it, because
and that is like they do a model in 3D printing, or
no, a lot of full scale 3D printing. So the students have had like a competition with where we had a jury. I was allowed to sit in the jury, and they came up with proposals on what kind of small building would they like to try to 3D print in relation to our campus project. And of course that was very interesting and a lot of attention from the students and from the university on this competition. And now we have a winner, which now we will 3D print the building they proposed and have it as a part of the project set. And so you can see and hopefully both we and the vendors which are part of the campus project can look at this and learn, and in this way maybe get 3D printing to be a more integrated part in how we work on buildings. There's a lot of potentials there, but not very much big scale implementation in Norway so far. So that is one example on how we can use the project and the muscles and cooperate both with the vendors and the firms outside, and also in this case the user at the university, and so we can make this environment where they can innovate, and we can also see if it's proof of concept and try it out in reality, and that's when you see if this innovation is going to work or not.
That sounds really interesting. That's
and it got to be great fun when they start printing this, and we need to find some big.
When will it be done?
Well, I'm not quite sure when it will be done. Now we are looking at who has equipment large enough to print, and how is it actually going to be done. So, but the competition is over. We have a winner, and we are working on now. And so I hope that during the next year, it'll be printed and finalized and like be it'll be a place to go to see what is the newest innovation in the sector, and hopefully inspire other parts of the construction sector and other projects and other organizations to try the same, because there is it's important to innovate, and the technology is there, and it's moving faster than we are aware of in many ways. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes, definitely. Talking about like the innovation and so on, I think one part of this is like procurement as well, right? So public procurement and framework agreements are often centered around cost. That we know, unfortunately, but that's how it is. But has Statsbygg introduced any new ways, like any new strategies to ensure sustainability and innovation? Within these constraints.
And I think I'm pleased to say that we very seldom do procurement based on lowest price. then it has to be paper cups,
okay.
and stationaries. Obviously, then it's
because that we often see that, right? That especially governmentally owned businesses, even though they know that we need these things to work, we need these solutions or whatever. Then often it's the penny that does it.
If you take the stationery and there is a no-brainer procurement aside, in Norway, for one thing, the government has said that in every public procurement, the sustainability has to amount to 30% of the evaluation criteria. So even if you would go for the lowest price as far as you could, it will only be allowed to be 70% of the evaluation. Climate is always to be 30% at the minimum.
All right.
So that is one good thing that the government has done. And then
have you been a part of that as well, as we spoke about before?
Well, this is a political decision, but we have been of course using the climate requirement before this came, and then also maybe being able to see that this is not very difficult. It's not dangerous.
Maybe inspired.
Well, hopefully. But it's a political initiative, and they thought they are very well aware of that the state is a very big procurement actor. So they are very aware of that. If they are going to change the market, they have also to work through how the government and the government agency do their procurement. So 30% at minimum will be set aside for evaluation based on climate. And then in Statsbygg, we always try to evaluate on competence and also on understanding of the mission. And hopefully on life cycle cost, and there's no one size fits all. Every big procurement has its specialties, so we can tweak on the percentage on each, but and of course the cost. The cost on the procurement is one thing, but the life cycle cost and the competence for the people doing it and the quality, it's always an evaluation based on a multiple criteria where cost never is alone. It's never alone, and at the maximum it's weighted 70%, sometimes 40%. If it's a complex project, for instance, a complex delivery where life cycle cost and the cooperation and making sure that we do the right decisions and develop, if there's a lot of uncertainty, often cost is weighted less. It's more on competence and understanding of the task at hand. So,
but how do you go around that? Do you what is the most? What can you say? This is the most important thing to weigh in when it comes to procurement, or is that just dependent on?
It's dependent. It's dependent because if the concept is well known in the market, and the risk regarded to the procurement of the project is well understood, then of course cost can rank higher. If there's uncertainty, and the important thing, of course, is to have a way of procuring things that makes the one who is best suited to take the risk is actually owning the risk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if there's a lot of risk involved, which the vendor can't control, which is on our hand in the end, then we have to carry the risk. And then, of course, it cannot be fixed price or lowest costs, because that will only push the risk over to the vendor side. And if they are not actually controlling it, it's just going to be more expensive for everybody involved. So there's no one size fits all, I think, to procurement. But nevertheless, no matter what kind of procurement it is, climate is counting 30%. And we never, if it's not stationary, we never procure on low cost at buying. It's always life cycle and competence and quality involved. And I think that's how it should be. Yeah. Because cost of ownership is what's important for us, not only buying cost.
In each episode, we bring 3 questions from key industry voices. For today's episode, we are happy to announce that our CEO of Schneider Electric Norway, Alexandre Vermont, is here with us.
Yes, thanks for having me. Very happy to be part of that conversation on a very important topic linked to energy efficiency and sustainability. We're glad to contribute with Statsbygg being the largest player, I guess, on the market with 2,134 buildings.
Something like that,
which is quite impressive, I have to say. So great to be part of that dialogue.
Perfect. Yeah, nice to have you. Nice to have you here, Alexander. But I'll leave the floor to you, and let's get on with your questions.
So good morning, Harald. Very nice to be with you this morning. I'm curious. Statsbygg has set ambitious goals for BIM and digital twins. Mm-hmm. How are you currently using these technologies in your buildings?
I think we of course use. We started using BIM, I think, for maybe 15 years ago or something, when we had the National Museum, which is now constructed, when we had the procurement of the architectural conference. I think this was the first project actually demanding a digital BIM model from the architects. So that was the first off, and I think in a way it changed the market in Norway, introducing a BIM and digital way of working. And now BIM has BIM and digital twins. We try to be precise when discussing that. What does it mean for us? But because we think BIM is not it's not a specific tool, or it's not a specific technology. We are more interested in what kind of data is in the model and how can we use the data in the operation of the buildings. So in that sense, we use BIM and digital twins a lot. All of our construction projects, of course, use BIM and digital twins to model the project. And also when operating, we try to extract as much as the data as possible from the BIM or the digital twins and into the operating phase of the building. But this is where we need to improve. Both Statsbygg and the construction industry and the building industry as an industry need to improve, because there's not enough focus on data governance. What kind of data do we really need in operating the building in the long term? And I think we try to move not away from BIM or digital twins, but not to look at them as a product or a data tool, but as a part of a model of how to govern the data through the construction and operating process. And I think that is an important. That's important to be precise. Otherwise, you just buy a BIM model and you construct a building, and when you're finished, you have a BIM model, but how to use it. So I think that is, and that is what we are, where I think for Statsbygg's part, the biggest improvements ahead lies in more specific knowledge on data governance. What kind of data do we actually need out of the BIM model when going into operation? What can we make money off? And then the constructors and the vendors and the engineering companies, of course, can have freedom to use the BIM model as they see fit to actually produce and deliver their tools or their equipment. But what do we need when we are going to operate this in the 28? And we don't need more. We need, and I think one of the, and of course, we have only just touched the potential of optimized engineering, for example, based on BIM models and based on AI. And there's a very interesting way ahead using these, but we need to use them more consistently and have focus on data governance. Not only in, I don't mean to sound like negative to BIM, but we need to be sure that we use it in the right way.
Yeah.
And that means that it's not a standalone tool. It's not a technology. It has to be part of a process.
And BIM is of course a tool that can be used from design, build, operate, maintenance as well. So that's the consistency of the data that can be useful to all the different players.
Yeah, and that is what we need to optimize and to be sure to know what kind of tools do we have in the different buildings. And I think when we get a better grip on that, we could start discussing with Schneider, for instance, what kind of what part of this equipment do we need to own? Could we lease it? Yeah. Why do we have to buy it? Why can't you maintenance it? Because you have 50,000 of these equipment all over the world, but we have only 10, and still But then we need the consistency of the data, and we need to know what we need to know. And in the usage of BIM and digital twins today, I think there is. All the people, and one of the beautiful things with BIM and digital twins, of course, is that all the people involved can work in the same model, and you have real-time updates.
Yes.
But that also implies that everybody working in the model needs to have what they need at that time in that model, and that makes it very big. Mm-hmm. So I think they need to know. And if you ask people out on the properties, doing maintenance, and they come past a pump or a circuit from Schneider or whatever, and they say, well, what do you do then? I ask them, if you wonder what this is, do you go in the digital twins, or do you go in the files? Oh, well, mostly we just Google the number on the pumps, and then we get all we need to know. So how to use it? Yeah, yes. How to use it in the what is the value of the data? That is, I think. And there's an enormous potential if we manage to do that smart and can use AI all over the portfolio. It's very exciting.
Thanks for sharing and taking that example of the National Museum, which is using a lot of Schneider technology, by the way. So that's great. As far as we understand, it's only 30% of Statsbygg's building that have full data coverage. What are the main barriers?
I think what we already have been discussed in a way is that we have a lot of very different buildings built in very different times. Some of them are new, very complex. Some of them are old, where you cannot have access.
One size fits all.
Yeah, so there's not one size fits all. But of course, our ambition is to have the data we need for optimization in every building. So it's to find the right level. So that's true that only 30% has full data coverage, but we do not think that 100% is the right answer. To operate efficiently for us, maybe 60%. Or that's what we need to find out. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What needs to happen to accelerate the adoption of BIM and digital twins in public buildings?
I think we have been working very hard on innovating on how to use BIM, how to use digital twins, how to innovate with the vendors. We have for 5 years ago, we took one step back and we said we need to work on our IT infrastructure. We need to work on our data governance. We need to work on what kind of data do we need from what kind of equipment. How can we be sure that this data is valid? How do we handle it in our system? How do we make sure we have data integrity and data stewards that owns the data? And we had to go one step back when this infrastructure we now have at the corporate level. We have gone up in the sky. We are getting rid of old data systems. So now I think we are getting to a point where we can scale up and look
are you doing that?
Across properties, right? And being able to, because if we are going to gather information and use it for something useful, we need to make sure of the integrity of the data and make sure what it actually counts. And I mean, measuring energy consumption, for example, in all of our 2,135 properties all over the countries, and being sure that we're actually measuring on the right level and it's comparable numbers, has turned out to be quite a task. So there's also a lot of to get the big scale effect and to be able to use AI on a corporate level. There's a lot of nitty-gritty works that need to be done out also in the buildings and on the sites, and I think that is the important, both knowing what you need at the corporate level and making sure that you get it out on the properties. And I think it's very important not to start in the other direction. What can we get from the technology and from the sensors out in every property and try to merge them? You have to start the other way around.
And Schneider Electric can contribute in that journey with all the energy, let's say, meters and measuring all, let's say, the energy consumption. And you're completely correct. It always starts with the data, getting data, and it starts with the measurement. And after that, you can work on the energy consumption.
And I think every big company like Statsbygg have a lot of legacy. Yes. On the data side. It has been developing for 50 years in different parts of Norway, in different buildings with different vendors. So there's a lot of data legacy that we also need to clear tidy up a bit before we can get the big benefits from new technology. But we are getting there. And I'm also happy to say, when we talk about energy consumptions, that we have been gradually ticking down our energy consumption with 4% every year.
Okay.
Yes, and that is the way we are working now. Our goal is that in 2050 we will sell energy, not buy energy. And we think it's a realistic goal. We can reduce the energy consumption and we can also produce energy locally. And that is an interesting thought.
Yes.
Maybe in 2050, Statsbygg is an energy company, not only an energy buying construction company or building commissioner. So that is the goal. The
ultimate goal.
The ultimate goal, be able to sell energy. And I think it could be doable with new technology. And then, of course, many of the problems we now have with energy shortage related to the green transition, we have to prioritize between videos of cats and TikTok, defense and industry,
Indeed.
Greenage in industry. So we try to brand the energy efficiency we work on, like the energy without any conflicts. We don't have to build windmills. We just save the energy in the building by working smarter on technology.
And the gains can really be significant. I mean, it's not an utopia to save 30% of the energy just by doing some modernization, measurements, and so on. This is at reach. And so
I've talked to colleagues in other countries, and we have, for the last year, we have taken the energy consumption down with 4% a year. And if you go that way in 5 or 6 years, it amounts to quite a lot.
Yes.
And that is also whilst we have introduced electric cars and the stations for charging
stations.
Yes, so we have taken down the energy consumption, but we deliver more services, even though it's relatively down. So I think it's motivating to see that it actually can be done.
And this is not happening at the cost of comfort and the well-being of the employees. This is really on top, which makes it even more attractive.
And I would say soon, or more likely the opposite, because when you get more control and more governance on how you use energy, I think also the environment or the climate for the user will be better, because it's controlled, it's planned, it's not just happening or being adjusted. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, I see that you have very ambitious target, but you're on a good track. So I'm happy to support you in that journey.
Yeah.
It was great talking to you. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. We know that Statsbygg has set an ambitious goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2030, right? This is a significant challenge, and we'd love to explore how you plan to reach this, because it's 5 years away. So would you say is it realistic to manage in only 5 years, and how is it possible to achieve it?
Well, to start with the goal, of course, it's important, I think, to have stretched ambitions and to actually dare to have ambition goals on this most important field of our business, I think, today. So I think we're very determined to set ambitious goal to drive and be a forefront runner in both processes and technology to make sure this is going to happen. And what we do is, we plan very thoroughly for how to do it. It's not like it's taken out of the sky like a management slogan. We have plans, we have technology in place, we measure, we follow this up through all our projects and our property on a quarterly basis, and measure how we are doing. And I think this both the ambition and the leadership commitment into having this as an important part of the running of the business makes me optimistic. I mean, this is not easy, but since 2020 we have reduced our CO2 footprint by 30% up till this year, and that has happened in a period where we have almost doubled our investments. So this shows that it can be done, but you need to measure, you need to document, you need to have managerial processes and targets where this is followed up, and it's a central part of the management of the company. Then it can be done. It's amazing what we can achieve if we just devote efforts to it. So I'm optimistic, but of course we know it's a stretch target, and I think should we not reach it, I'm sure we'll come close, and we'll achieved a lot and made a lot both in our own company and around us, build a lot of competence in how to be done and how to be even better from 2030 and on.
Let's hope that you hit it, right? but what do you see like the biggest obstacles and challenges? Like what would be holding you back to achieve this?
That's a good question. Of course, it's I think competence and to get the skilled workers, the competent employees, it's very important. We have a lot of very dedicated and very competent people in Statsbygg today on this area, but I think also within all our vendors and with everything we procure, we need to make sure that the companies delivering to us is competent and have the skills actually to reach this level. We can only go so far on our own. We are at the end dependent on all the other being part of our value chain, right? And so working on collaboration and sharing of knowledge and building competence all through the value chain, I think is the most important, because it's not that this technology is not there, and it's not like it's so much more expensive than not doing it. This is not the hampering thing. I think it's about processes, value chain, and competence, and actually getting it done.
So in getting it done, more like internally from your perspective, like competence within Statsbygg in this case?
Yeah, and within all the value chain, everybody is delivering products to us. We are a state agency which are doing most of our production through procurement. We don't have much of our production that we do ourselves. We procure them from the market, from vendors, and we need the collaborations in the value chain by all the parties attributing to our properties and to our projects and sharing the knowledge. And I think in that sense, I mean, the knowledge in the value chain to all actors working on our projects or helping us maintain our properties know and are competent in making the right choices in a sustainable manner.
So back to what we have been speaking about before, right? With the strong partnerships and to doing this together.
Right, kind of procurement, management, determination, measuring, following up, and competence in all parts of the value chain. I think that is the single most important thing. Also, of course, for our own employees, but I think it has to trickle down into the complete value chain to really get the big effects.
We are closing in on the end of this episode, this podcast episode, together with you, Harald. And I think that like what we just spoke about, and that could be quite interesting to elaborate a bit on here. But we have been speaking about what you have done to reach where you guys are at right now, the struggles, if you may,
of course,
and like the challenges.
This is not easy.
No, it's not. It's not
very
an easy
important,
task.
but it doesn't make it easy.
Yeah.
Well,
so closing reflections on this. Like, what would be your number one advice for property managers who would like to accelerate digitization and sustainability, like in the same manner that you have done, or maybe even better?
I think it's important to actually know. I mean, everybody can set ambitious goals and do kind of a greenwashing in statements and in PowerPoints and so on, but actually knowing the drivers of your business and knowing what contributes to energy reduction or reduces the CO2 footprints, also the hardcore facts on the key driver and deliverables in the value chain in the business, and measuring and knowing where to start. So it's like it's bit down to the details. Where is the energy consumption biggest? What is the drivers? What is the key? And it's much more about processes than technology. That is our experience. The technology is there. The most difficult thing is to get the good processes to make sure that you actually make it happen and can measure changes and improvement consistently over time, because then you can use managerial efforts to get where you want to go.
That's great. Thank you. Like, processes is...
It's very important in knowing your business, having the good processes so that you actually can work on continuous improvement and knowing what is working and what is not working. Just not a lot of buzzwords and fancy statements, but the hard work on the actual deliverables in your value chain.
Straight from the man who has achieved it. So yeah, I believe you are definitely onto something here, Harald. But and finally, before we break up this session, would you care to give us like 3 quick tips for how facility managers successfully can drive the global green transition?
I think we have to start with the obvious. We have to use our buildings better. We have done a lot of measurement in Norway and through our European network about how much a building is used, and we never find a building being utilized more than 50% of the capacity. So actually using the buildings to their potential, and not only between 8 or 5, but 24, maybe not 24/7, but multiple usage in the buildings and using them efficiently, and just walk around in any office building where you work and count people and seats, and you'll find that there's an excess of space, and that is what we really need to do. And that the beauty of that is that it fits well into the cost aspect as well. There's a lot of resources we do not use, and in a sustainable perspective, there should be a lot more focus on why do we have offices that is twice as big in Europe that we actually need, with all the problems that makes. So that's where we have to start. Then, of course, there's 2 more things. The second is it's leadership. You have to be devoted. You have to have the ability to imagine what is possible. You have to have devoted leadership, actually following this up, making requirements and measuring and doing the nitty-gritty work of following up the results of this. And I think it's very important for us and for everybody to collaborate through the value chain, to share knowledge and to collaborate with vendors and users so that everybody can move as fast as possible in one direction.
What a lovely note to end on. Collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's where it all starts.
Thank you very much, Harald. I've had a great time doing this kind of interview together with you. Learned quite a lot about both you and Statsbygg and your mission and what you guys are trying to achieve here. So yeah, a lot to look forward to. Yeah.
Thank you, Oliver, and it's been nice. Thanks for having me. It's been a nice discussion. I think very interesting topics, which always it's always leaves food for thought for me as well, being part of those kind of discussions. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, and for you guys who have listened in on this, hope that you have gained some insights and so on. If you are interested in learning more about certain topics that we have discussed, please go into our website, to the Great Switch landing page. You will find that in the description. And thank you very much, and have a nice day.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only, should not be undertaken as financial, economic, legal, business, tax, or investment advice. The information, statements, views, and opinions should not be construed as the provision of advice by Schneider Electric, or as an offer to buy or sell any products or services, or to make or consider any investment or course of action.